The Russians expected the Ukrainian army to storm the cities, but the Ukrainians bypassed the cities and cut off roads and communications. As a result, towns and villages were encircled and the Russians fled, abandoning everything. The Russian command tried to save the situation. They called for air support, but they lost several planes. We have footage of a downed Russian Su-34 fighter jet that went down in the woods. Another plane went down in a field. And some Russian planes could not even take off and immediately fell down, like in this video. Also, the Russians tried to use the TOS Solntsepek flamethrower system against Ukrainian soldiers, but Ukrainian intelligence tracked it down with a drone and destroyed it. Here it is, now lying on the ground. Trying to contain the Ukrainians' military onslaught, the Russians sent rapid reaction groups into battle, but they were destroyed on their approach by HIMARS systems. We have video footage of this. By the way, MLRS-270 systems and the HIMARS themselves were caught on camera several times in this operation. Ukraine uses them very successfully. High-precision artillery gives the Ukrainians a significant advantage in the speed of advance, as they do not waste time on artillery duels. One target, one shot, and the Russians are finished. The operation was lightning fast. In just 2 days, the Ukrainian army deepened 50 kilometers forward and took the town of Kupiansk. This was an important and strategic city for Russian logistics on this section of the front. The railroads used by the Russians to supply ammunition and reserves passed through here. And on day 5, almost the entire Kharkov region had already been liberated by the Ukrainian military. It took the Russians 120 days just to seize the territory, which the Ukrainian army had liberated in 5 days. The reputation of the Russian army was irreparably damaged, but the most interesting thing turned out to be ahead. You don't have to be a big military expert to understand that leaving military equipment to the enemy is inadmissible. After all this military equipment will now be directed against the Russian army. In fact, Russia has strengthened the Ukrainian army at its own expense. We have exclusive photos and videos of all this abandoned Russian equipment and ammunition. Now the Ukrainians will shoot Russian shells at the Russians. The military command of the Ukrainian army will be able to create several new army brigades using Russian tanks and artillery. Already during this offensive, the Ukrainians have successfully used abandoned Russian tanks in combat with the Russians. In this video, we see a Ukrainian soldier painting over the Russian markings and drawing a Ukraine managed to make the Russian army panic. Therefore, Russian soldiers fled en masse. Running away, the Russians left behind heavy armored vehicles as they drive slowly. They fled mostly in trucks or light armored infantry vehicles, and many on foot. We see plenty of evidence of this. The Ukrainians destroyed the bridge over the Oskol River to prevent the Russians from escaping. Then they tried to cross the river, but they failed. They abandoned their transport and swam across the river. Obviously, the Russian military